Thank you for coming. Today is a wonderful chance, thanks to the Greensteins, right? That's what you said. Greensteins. To teach a little bit in Houston from the deep well springs of Chassidus. And this particular class that we're going to do is a subset of a much, much larger topic in Chassidus called faith and confidence, emunah v'bitachon. And you may know it, and you'll probably recognize this, as the topic that the Rebbe used to call tracht gut v'zayin gut, which means think good and it will be good. But we're going to put it into a much wider context, the context that's discussed all the way from the Alter Rebbe until the Rebbe himself. And this is, in my opinion, one of the most powerful things that has changed my life, to understand exactly how you use this. We're only going to do a subset. We're going to do something small that's connected to the topic was something like how do we stay sane or something like that in a world that's going crazy or something of that nature. How do you build yourself a mechitza, a type of boundary between yourself and the rest of the world when you need it, so that you can stay calm inside, you can refresh yourself, and so on. Okay. So, when you usually think about emunah, you think of, what do I believe in? Meaning, I'm a believer in such and such a principle. So, for instance, the Rambam is 13 principles of faith. So faith is something that I am required, as it were, to believe in. The Rebbe wasn't so big on this. The Rebbe, whenever somebody would tell him, should I believe like this or like that, he would tell him, lo likvoa masmerot, it's called in Hebrew. It's not, you don't nail these things on a wall. They're not like dogmas that you're somehow supposed to ascribe to. Rather, they're meant to push you forward, and they can shift. They change from time to time. Now, on the face of it, that's very hard to understand, given that there are certain things that we believe. For instance, that Hashem doesn't have a body. Of course, we don't really believe that, right? Because Hashem is not a body, but every body is part of Hashem. So we don't say Hashem is a body, but certainly Hashem is also the physical. He's also the physical world. Is Hashem spiritual? No. Maybe it sounds a little bit better because he's not bodily, but it's still a problem. So what, Hashem is like an neshama? That's not true either. So what we usually say is something like Hashem has a physical aspect, has a spiritual aspect, but he's neither. He's really neither of these. So you can get into all kinds of discussions in each one of these statements of principles of faith. But what I want to talk about today is that faith also means something entirely different. Entirely different. It's not about what I believe in, but rather faith is an exercise that I do to cleanse myself. And that's not what you usually think about emunah, but that's what we're going to explain. That emunah also means to purge oneself of all the nonsense that we have inside. In a certain sense, you can't begin to believe in Hashem until you've gotten rid of the idols. And the idols are the noise that's around us. There's a lot of idolatry out there. We don't mean idolatry, somebody's making a little idol and bowing down to it. We mean that all the noise that's created and is bombarding us all the time is taking our mind off of what we really should be thinking about, what we really should be striving for. And so, emunah, its first part is to actually purge the system, purge our minds of all the noise. And there's a tremendous amount of noise. One might say that today, like an iPhone tells you at the end of the week, I don't know if you have this feature turned on, tells you how much screen time. And seldom does it go down. It usually just goes up, not by much, but it goes up. And you're constantly bombarded. And how do you stop this? Well, you could turn your phone off. That could help. But really, that's not going to help either, because what you've been bombarded with is already inside. So you have to find a way to really cleanse, to really get rid of all that. Today, what we're being bombarded by 24 hours a day is not just information in the usual sense. It's information that causes paranoia. That's the worst part. That this is causing us. Well, first of all, we have to understand what is paranoia. Paranoia, usually people say, everybody's chasing me, everybody's after me. What they don't say usually is that in order for me to think that everyone's chasing me, I first of all have to think that I'm a pretty important person. If I don't think that I'm an important person, nobody's chasing me. Nobody cares. Nobody's looking for me, because I'm nothing. What does it matter? But paranoia really builds on a sense of self-importance. And all this information that's being fed to us is trying to, it's very calculated, it's trying first of all to give us a feeling that we're very important people. Because look at all the amount of information that's coming to us. Certainly we can probably affect something because it's coming to us. We could probably make all the decisions about how the world should run, which is not true. It's just an imaginary feeling. But it strengthens the ego. And when the ego goes overboard because it's bombarded this way every single day, hour after hour after hour, at a certain point you come to start piecing pieces together and creating some kind of narrative where the world is after you. The world's trying to destroy you. And that's where you get conspiracy theories. Also, same thing. But if you take everything at face value, if you wouldn't be bombarded by all this information through the media and especially through the phones, you'd feel like we felt 50 years ago. 50 years ago, nobody felt that anybody was after them. Nobody felt they were so important. There were some important people because they were sitting in very important places and they were getting the real information. But most people were normal. They were just normal, and they had time. I was talking the other day with someone here about writing Sifrei Torah. So you probably know that today every Sefer Torah that's finished goes through a computerized check, like a Haggah. You've probably heard about this, right? You know that this is done. In fact, you probably should not read in public from a Sefer Torah that has not gone through a computerized Haggah. Why? Because the computer catches everything. So somebody said, so what did they do before there were computers? How could the Sefer be kosher if only a person was going over it? And to make this clear, if you have a person go over a Sefer Torah, and you have the computer go over a Sefer Torah, you'll see that there are many, many things the person didn't catch. So what happened? What did they do before there were computers? The Sefer Torah were not kosher? So first of all, we have a principle that God doesn't ask us to do more than we can. So if that's what there was, that's what there was. But I think the real difference is that 80 years ago, when you had somebody who was a Magia, who would check the Sefer Torah, his mind functioned at a wavelength that we can't function today. They had an inner sense of calm. They had an inner sense of being that we don't have because they weren't bombarded. So they were about themselves. Their wits were about themselves. And they could consciously make an effort to focus on something for hours. Today, there's almost no sofer who can write the Sefer even if it's not being shown to him from below. I don't know if you've seen how they write them now. But they have a table, a light table, and they put a copy of what the Torah needs to be like underneath the parchment. And so they have all the letters already showing, they just have to mark them in. They used to copy from another Sefer. They had to look up and look down, look up and look down. They can't do that anymore. They don't have, or most of them don't have the ability to even have that much focus. So the world is changing. You can't fight it usually. Usually not much you can do. But what you have to learn is strategies about how to not fight it and say, I'm not going to be part of it, but I may be part of it, but I also know strategies about how to minimize the damage that it does. And this is what emunah is about. So emunah, let's say it in Hasidic language, emunah is a sense of nothingness. Because in the end, when I come to define what is Hashem, so before I can even define not, but when I come to relate to Hashem, I first of all have to clear the air from myself. If I can't clear the air from myself, from my own being, from my own sense of being, I can't come to connect to Hashem. I can't have emunah really. And again, if you think about emunah as like a logical structure, a principle that you have to think about, that's one thing. Here we're talking about emunah as the basis for the relationship. So if I'm going to have faith, let's say, in another individual, and I don't trust him, it won't work. I have to have a clean slate with which to work. So in my relationship with this person, the same thing is with Hashem. If I, for some reason, have all kinds of preconceptions about who Hashem is, then I'm not going to be able to develop a true relationship. It's going to be a relationship with my own beliefs, my own wants, my own feelings, and in the end, it's almost a relationship with myself. And to really relate to Hashem, we have to clear ourselves out of the picture. Allow Hashem to appear. And when Hashem appears, it's very different than if we try to get to Him. It's something completely different. But we don't want to leave it like that. We're not just about emunah, because we also have to act in the world. So if we could be in a state of clear mind all the time, that would be very nice. But that's not for our current reality. In our current reality, we have much work to do. From the fact that we have mitzvos, to the fact that we have to influence the world, to the fact that we have to educate our children. There's a lot of things that we need to do where we have to be present. But this is the beautiful thing, that if I've been able to clear myself of all the noise that's been collecting inside of me, and I allow Hashem to appear, then I have what we call bitachon, confidence, which is putting new content, like pouring new content into myself, which is entirely content that doesn't come from the media, from anywhere else. It only comes purely from Torah. That type of content creates in a person a sense of confidence that he can act, that she can act. So there's first the making of the vessel, and then there's the pouring content into it. And we're going to see both some ideas about this from Torah, and we'll also explain it a little bit more better from a passage in the book of Melachim, of Kings. Well, we'll see exactly this happening. In the Tanya, it seems very simple. You have a Yetzer Hara, and that's what's causing your trouble. The Tanya also mentions there could be things coming from the outside, but it's minor in the Tanya. I would say that today the situation is reversed. That most of what's troubling us is all this influence from the outside. And the Yetzer Hara doesn't have to work overtime, because he has all these proxies working for him. I don't really need to do anything. So we have a tough time. In the Tanya, the only thing that I'm being judged by is my own Yetzer Hara. In today's world, we're constantly being judged in the sense of being criticized, looked at, having to fend it off. There's a counter argument to everything I say. And this is all coming from the outside. It's not from inside. It used to be very simple. The person was who he was, and he may have had some cravings. And that was the extent of the difficulty of life. But today, it's not even about that, because most people under the age of, let's say, 25, can't even decide who they are because they're so bombarded. They simply have no sense of self yet. They're just so lost in this constant noise around them that's not allowing them to even coalesce into a coherent human being. And if you're over 25, you still suffer from it. So you may know who you are, but you're constantly on the defensive against these forces that are constantly trying to get in. Okay, so let's see if we accept that Emunah is about purging, about the need to, first of all, clean myself of all my past conceptions. So how do you do that? How can you clean yourself of all this? So Chazal set it up in such a way, the sages set it up in such a way, and this is the main meditation that you do when you say every day, at least twice a day, Shema. The Shema is meant to be the statement of faith, right? What does it say? That Hashem is one. So, what do you mean? That He's one, He's not two, and He's not three. It's not that simplistic. And even if it was, that wouldn't carry us very far. And more importantly, why do we have to cover our eyes when we say the Shema? What's the whole idea behind that? I can't count if I have my eyes open. I know how to count to one, even when my eyes are open. But Shema, as Chassidus explains, means to meditate. That's how people translate it today. I don't like that word. I prefer contemplate. Because meditate immediately conjures up images of people sitting in a lotus position and doing some kind of meditation. It's really to contemplate. What are we contemplating? We're contemplating God's oneness. What does it mean that God is one? Any ideas? Except for that He's not two, which is kind of strange. What?
Nothing exists other than Him.
Right. So we say Hashem is everything. What's the problem with that?
We see things.
We have eyes. And even if we don't have eyes, God forbid, we still have ourselves. And so there's definitely me. I'm here too. So Hashem, you got to decide where you're going to be. So clearly, the Shema requires me to purge everything, including everything I know about the world, including even the sense of my own being. That's difficult. That's not easy. But we, first of all, understand why we have to cover the eyes, because the eyes are the strongest sense that we have. And it causes us to think that there's a plurality here. There's many, many things that are not Hashem. But is it possible to look at the picture of this table, of this room right now, and say everything here is Hashem? Are you able to do that with your eyes open? How would you do that?
Just simply repeat it. Open my eyes and repeat the line that you just said. Everything is Hashem.
But do you sense that, or are you just saying it?
That if Hashem would just stop willing it to be, it just wouldn't.
Right, so that's one option. That I see that everything, like the Baal Shem Tov used to say, everything is coming into existence at this moment. And so where is it coming into existence from? From Hashem. And this is how Hashem wants to appear, as it were, right now. Of course, Hashem is much more than what we see in this room, obviously. There's a very famous teaching from the Baal Shem Tov that he said once that if we really wanted to teach our children to have emunah, so when they were 2 years old, we tell them Hashem is the cookie, which is true to a certain extent. Why the cookie? Because that's what they understand. That's something that they want, something that they understand. At age 3, we tell them, well, Hashem's the tricycle that you want, if there's such things still, I don't know. And then, as the child grows up, at age 5, it's the book you began to learn, and the content in it. They grow up a little bit more, you tell them it's money, they grow them a little bit more, it's your relationships with others, you grow up some more, it's your family. As a person keeps growing in awareness of the world, every time you tell them this is Hashem, and this is Hashem, and this is Hashem, and everything is Hashem. Until, he said, and again, this is if I really wanted them to understand what Hashem is, because I'm developing slowly. As they're on their deathbed, somebody would whisper in their ear But Hashem is much, much more than everything you ever experienced. So he said, why don't we teach this way, if it's so good? He says, because we don't want a person to be an idolater for 70 years. Because if you think that it's the cookie, and nobody's told you, and it's much, much more yet, then you think the cookie is Hashem, that's a problem. Yeah. But one option, like you said, a good strategy is, this all just came into being right now, and therefore none of it is separate from Hashem, as it were. What's another option? Another option is to look at it, and I recommend that you try this. To look at this, think of this as a photograph. Think of what you're looking at, everything, this picture, this scene, as just a photograph of something, of what we're seeing. And then think about the photograph, and you also in the photograph, because one of the problems with the previous strategy is that I'm still special. And even if everything was just brought into being, but I'm different than everything else here. But think of a photograph that would capture all of us, including yourself. And you'd look at the photograph. Do you identify with yourself in the photograph? Very little. That allows you to think in what we call the Soviv. The Soviv says everything is equal before Hashem. Before Hashem, really the oneness of Hashem causes everything to be equal. That's another strategy. But what I want to teach you now is I want to try to help you purge entirely everything from yourself, including your own sense of being. If we can do that, and while your eyes are closed, like we do in Shema. And if we're successful in it, then you have an incredible tool for creating a boundary in time from everything that's around you. Okay? So we're going to do it like guided imagery, which means that we're going to use a very, very simple technique to give you a sense that there's nothing here. Completely nothing at all, except for one thing. Only Hashem. So you close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that we're not going to go through the whole pace of it, but I want you to imagine that you're walking into a pool. And you're very, very comfortable. The water is exactly the right temperature. You're walking in, and you're completely covered, and you're breathing comfortably. There's no problem. You're breathing underwater. And I want you to imagine that the water around you is a certain clear blue type of color. And I want you to imagine yourself slowly churning transparent, and the water being everything there is, including, as it were, inside of you. And everything is like you're disappearing into the color of the water. You can do the same thing just where you're sitting. You're becoming transparent, and there's nothing except for whatever's around you. And that's filling you just as much as it's filling the air around you, the water around you. But we're going to use the water. So imagine yourself looking at your hand now and not seeing it anymore. Just seeing the water. Your hand has become completely transparent. Your whole being, your whole body, everything is now exactly like the water. And now imagine that this water that you're immersed in, and that everything else is immersed in, is just Hashem. This is just being one with Hashem. There's nothing else except for this transparent, clear blue. That's all there is. So just hold that for a few seconds. Try to feel that and experience it on your whole body, that everything has become exactly the same transparent color. And you've enmeshed into the fabric of all there is, which is Hashem. Now, as you experience that, or not even experience it, but are just aware of it, now say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Now say that Hashem is Echad. In your mind, there's just Hashem. That's all there is. Including me, including everything that's here. You can open your eyes and try that from time to time and see what it does. That's an act of emunah. It's an act of purging myself from all my beliefs, everything that there is, everything disappears, and there's only Hashem. By the way, in the East, that's a lot of what they do. But they end up with nothingness. Because you have to have an essential connection to Hashem to end up with somethingness, with being. They, in fact, spend their whole lives trying to empty themselves more and more and more and more, whereas we spend our entire lives trying to feel Hashem more and more and more. Not as something that is nothing, but rather as everything, as the being, the only being that there is, the true essential nature of being. But once you finish this exercise, and you say the Shema, when you say the Shema, then you have to begin to create a vessel, because there's no vessel now. It's just being. There's nothing else. And you want to create a vessel inside of you, that you become a vessel for the good things in the Torah. So how do you do that? So that's called confidence. Let's read where this word comes from in the Torah. It's not an easy word to find in the Chumash. It's a word that exists in the Nach, but in Chumash, in the Pentateuch as they call it, the 5 books of Moshe Rabbeinu, it's a very uncommon word. And the place that we find it is in the story of leprosy, of Tzaras. And it says there, very strange thing that we can't even imagine, that a house could be plagued by leprosy. And so, strangely, this is going to be exactly what we just did. The priest shall order the stones with the plague in them to be pulled out and cast outside the city into an impure place. The house shall be scraped inside all around, and the coating that is scraped off shall be dumped outside the city in an impure place. This is describing purging. That's exactly what it's doing. It's saying, you scrape everything out. You empty the house. You have to empty the house before the priest comes and says that it's plagued, because otherwise everything that's inside becomes tummy. And you have to, some things you can't even fix once they're tummy. You have to break them. So you don't want to break anything, you don't want to lose any of your belongings. So you really clean out the house before you start doing this. And that's our emunah. That's our state of purging ourselves, emptying ourselves of everything, including the coating, including what was a vessel until now. And then it says, they shall take other stones and replace those stones with them. And think about the walls being all taken apart. Everything's taken apart. And now you're building them again. You're taking new stones and rebuilding those walls. And take other coating and plaster the house. The verb to plaster in Hebrew, as here it's in bold, is vetach. Vetach et habayit. Vetach, today if you want to say plaster in Hebrew, say tiach. That's the Hebrew word for it. It comes from this word vetach. Letayach is to coat something, it's to plaster it. The word bitachon comes from this verb. Bitachon we think means strength, confidence, courage maybe, trust. But in the Torah it really means to coat, to finish the inside of a house, of a vessel. When you're doing it on a house, you call it vetach. If you're doing it on a vessel, it's a similar thing, but you could use the same verb. So bitachon is really making a vessel. What do you do once you have a vessel? You fill it with something. So because of that, we have 2 types of confidence. There's what we call passive confidence and active confidence. Bitachon savil and bitachon pa'il in Hebrew, but it doesn't matter. The point is that there's a passive form of confidence and an active form. A passive form of confidence is when you only coat the vessel. You prepare the vessel for something. The active form of confidence is actually filling it with something. First you coat it, and then you fill it. How do you coat your vessel? That's the Rebbe's famous statement, think good, and it will be good. To coat, to plaster, is the result of thought. That I have to have good thoughts in me. What kind of good thoughts? That it will be good. What is that? It's an imagination, it's a picture in my mind of what I want should be the future. What I want the future to be like. A lot of people are afraid to do this. I don't know, I think we're afraid to do this because we don't want to be, right, or even worse, not just disappointed, but feel rejected by reality, by Hashem. We don't want that to happen. And so we guard ourselves and we don't do that. But what if I told you that this is the purpose of human existence? When Hashem told Abraham that he's making a bris with him, the first time he makes a bris, he makes a covenant, he tells him an incredible statement that if the Torah wouldn't say it, we couldn't say it. He says to him, walk before me and be whole. What does that mean, walk before me? So Rashi says, he gives us a parable. He says, a man has two sons, a young son and an older son. And he needs to walk from one place to another. The young son, who doesn't know where they're going, he holds by his hand. And he escorts him, step by step. What does he do with the older son? He sends him ahead. And he says, you figure out the path that we need to follow. So what does the older son have? He has a responsibility of finding out where they're going. Who's the younger son? In the meaning of the parable, it's the people about whom the Torah says they walked with God. Who walked with God? Two people, Chanoch and Noach. So we say that the highest level that a non-Jew can come to is to walk with God, which means that when God makes a step, he makes a step. Because he doesn't know where they're going. Hashem is not counting on him to forge the path. He's not counting on him to decide where they're going. But what did he say to Avram? What does it mean to be a son of Avram? What does it mean to be a Jew? That you have to walk forward. Hashem is telling us, you decide where we go and I will follow. Anybody who knows a little bit about what the Rebbe was all about understands that that's what he was trying to get across to people. That when you go, it'll work out. When you decide to do something which is innovative and difficult and hard, Hashem will follow. Why is this? Because that's the task he gave us. There's no written or unwritten work where it says where any of us have what we have to do in our lives. There's no such thing. It can tell us what we need to do when we wake up at this hour of the day and so on, but not what we need to do with our lives. And nobody was born with a guidebook that said when you're 11 you have to be here and when you're it doesn't exist. Why? Because that is what confidence in Hashem means. It means, first of all, having an image, a picture of where I want to go. So if I don't do this, if I don't think good, and I'm only following step by step, whatever Hashem shows me, that's where I go.
It's kind of the opposite.
What?
I mean, saying what you're saying is the
way we can.
If Hashem's going to show me the way, then I'll go.
Right. Otherwise, I don't want to do.
What you're saying is, wherever we go, Hashem is.
We'll follow. That's what he told Avram. It's a tremendous chiddush, but it's not such a big chiddush. It's a pasuk. Hitalech lefanai ve'yetamim. Hisalech lefanai ve'yasamim. In fact, he says to him, your wholeness, meaning your completion as a being, is only possible through walking ahead of me. That's not what I would have thought. I thought, wait a minute, maybe what I need to do is to be completely subservient, like Noach, like Chanoch, And if Hashem makes a step, I'll make a step. It says about Noach that he had small emunah. Why did he have small emunah? Minor faith. Because he built the ark in the end, and then it started raining. And Hashem told him, in 7 days I'm bringing the flood. And it started raining on the 7th day. 7 days was the yortzeit, the Shiva of his grandfather Metushalach. So the Shiva ends, they stick a nail in the floor, whatever they do. And after the races, right? Everybody quick into the teva. The flood's coming tomorrow. What does he do? He sits around. It's raining, it's pouring, gets worse. He's not going into the teva. Why? Don't you believe Hashem? He says, if there's no other option, then I'll do it. But the world has to force me into it. I'm not going to take a step forward unless reality dictates it. So that's like a person walking step by step with Hashem. If Hashem shows him the absolute necessity, he'll move into the teva. If Hashem doesn't show him, so I didn't understand. I'm not doing it. I don't have initiative. Even when it's a prophecy, I know the flood is coming. What have I been doing for the last 120 years? Building a teva for what? Avram is completely the opposite. That's why Avram doesn't need to build a teva. Because the teva is for people who want to protect themselves, who want to survive when there's a flood outside. Avram doesn't look at the world that way. He says, there's not going to be a flood. Why is there not going to be a flood? Because I'll make sure to influence the world in such a way that it won't be necessary. My whole picture is to walk. Even when Hashem says, go. Even before he tells him, walk before me. He just says, lech lecha. He doesn't say to where. Avram starts walking. Where? We'll see. We'll know when we get there. How will you know? I'll know. By Noach, if you don't tell me the exact coordinates, if you can't give me an address, I'm not going anywhere. That's the difference between a Jew and a Ben Noach. That's all he's supposed to. So if a Jew is not at least doing passive confidence, which means picturing what the future should look like, then we're not fulfilling our mission. It seems strange. What, Hashem doesn't know where to go? Maybe he does. But he consciously left that to us, saying, you decide where we go. I'll follow. In fact, it says in the Gemara, "B'derech she'adam rotzeh leilech, molichin oto." In the path that a person wants to follow, he's given that path. It's a restatement of the same thing in the Chumash. So, if in case you thought maybe that was just Avram, it's not every single person. So the Gemara says it's every single Jew is this way. In the path that you want to follow, that is the path that they will allow you to take. Meaning they're almost like push you along. Just keep going. Yeah. That's passive confidence. What is active confidence then? Again, passive confidence is tracht gut, is to think good, is to have a vision of what I want to do. Active confidence is actually to carry it out. That's actually to walk. So first of all, I have to have a picture of what I want, then I have to actually go and do it. That's the act. Not always can I do what I picture. You should know that. That's why it divides into two parts. There's a part of thinking about it, and there's a part of acting it out. Not always do I have the ability to act and fulfill what I see. Why? Because I'm not Superman. And even if it's a very important thing, Hashem wants me to have a relationship with Him. So I have to ask. I have in my vision such and such. I need to daven for it. But I'm the one who creates the vision. Nobody's going to tell me what to daven for. There's no book that says. You have to decide by yourself what you want to daven for. And that is our role as Yidden. That's what we're supposed to do. So there's a part of it that I can do, that's davening, envisioning it, seeing it, however you want to do it, painting it. There are people who paint this. I don't know if that's I don't know. Sometimes they have a picture of Beis HaMikdash. Okay. So I don't know if you need to picture the Beis HaMikdash like it was in time before this and show a building that existed maybe 2,000 years ago, or you should picture the Beis HaMikdash entirely in a new way. Whatever it is, you picture it first of all. Then, in order to get there, you have to start acting, you have to start doing. And when you can't, then you fall back into asking Hashem. And asking Him all along also. I'll give you another example. There was a tzaddik in Yerushalayim, his name was Rabusher Freund. The Rebbe used to send people to him. In fact, some people came to the Rebbe and he said, where are you from? You're from Yerushalayim. Why did you come here? You have Rabusher in Yerushalayim. You don't need to come here. Huh? No. Asher Freund. He built the first, I don't know what you call it in English, it's a Beit Avra. How do you say Beit Avra? Like right. So what did you say? What was it? I said recuperation. Right. A recuperation center for women after childbirth. He built the first one. He built it in the 60s. He had a very wealthy friend from London who, after he saw that he had purchased the land and they started working, he came to Eretz Yisrael and he saw it and he said, Rabusher, I want to give you all the money that you need for this. So Rabusher thought about it a little. He said, come to me tomorrow, I'll tell you what we'll do. So he came the next day and he said, I don't want the money. He's giving you everything you need in order to build such a place of chesed. Why would you say no? So he asked him, Rabusher, why not? So he says, he thought about it a little, and this is what I pictured. You'll give me all the money in a check. What will I have to do with this check? I can't tear little pieces off and give it to the contractors. So I'm going to have to put it in the bank, deposit it there, and all the money will sit in the bank. And every time I need to pay one of the contractors something, where will I have to go? To the bank. And I'll have to ask someone at the bank to give me money. I don't want to do that. I'd rather ask Hashem. That's a strange point of view, isn't it? What do you mean? Because you're asking from the bank, it's not like asking from Hashem? He says, no, it's different. It's not the bank that's the problem. It's the fact that I already feel fulfilled. I already have everything I need. He says, I'd rather have the ongoing relationship with Hashem, that every time that I need to pay someone, I'll ask Him, and then the money will come from somewhere, rather than that from now, for the next 2 years, while we're building this, I feel Hashem's in my pocket. He's like, I do with Him whatever I want. This is what active confidence is about. Active confidence is that I want to do, but I also have good content in me that says that everything I do, I'm doing with Hashem. I'm asking Him for it. That's my action here. I could have everything, but then I wouldn't need to think of Hashem. The fact that we can't do this all at once, that we have to keep asking, that's the relationship. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we don't know exactly where we're going in life. Because if we knew exactly where we were going, if we were able to get there by ourselves, we wouldn't need Hashem. We'd have no relationship. When do people turn to Hashem? When suddenly their plans derail. So l'chatchila, he didn't want to even go into that state. I don't want my plans to derail. I want that wherever I am at that moment, I'll be seeking Hashem's help. I'll be talking to Hashem. So the passive confidence is making the plan. The active confidence is carrying it out. But even when you're carrying it out, it's called confidence in Hashem, because at every step, it can be saying, I can't do anything without you, Hashem. So I want you to be here. Hashem's not planning it for me. I planned it. I thought about it. That's my duty. But I want Hashem. I'm looking back at every moment. Are you coming with me? Are you coming with me? So that's living with Hashem at every moment. Let's look at an example of this from the story. We say this as the Haftarah of Parshas Vayera. And actually, this story is always quoted in Chassidus as the best example of what it means to have confidence in Hashem, to have bitachon in Hashem. So a certain woman, the wife of one of the disciples of the prophets, I'm looking at where it says 2 Kings 4:1-7. It's on the first page. Oh, it's on the second page for you, right. A certain woman, the wife of one of the disciples of the prophets, cried out to Elisha the prophet, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know how your servant revered Hashem, and now a creditor is coming to seize my 2 children as slaves." This woman, according to Chazal, she's the wife of the Navi Ovadia. And Ovadia is in the time, this is all happening in the time of Achav and Izevel, who were 2 of the most terrible kings that the northern kingdom had, the kingdom of Israel. Izevel wanted to kill all the prophets of Hashem, and Ovadia hid them for a year and a half in a cave, 100 of them, and he provided them with everything they needed. And until Izevel found out where they were, and she killed all of them. She had all of them put to death. So the wife of Ovadia, she comes to Elisha, and she says, "We have a lot of debt." Why do we have a lot of debt? Because for a year and a half, we've been providing for 100 people. So we're in terrible debt. And now, and back then, and by the way, you can still do this today, but Baruch Hashem, we don't do it. The creditor can come and take our children as indentured servants. That was one of the ways that people once paid back their debts. And she cries out to him, "Should this be what happens to me?" So he said to her, "What can I do for you? Tell me what you have in the house." And she replied, "Your maidservant has nothing at all in the house except a jug of oil." She has 1 jug of oil. "Go," he said, "and borrow vessels outside from all your neighbors, empty vessels as many as you can. Then go in and shut the door behind you and your children, and pour oil into all those vessels, removing each one as it is filled." What's he telling her to do? You have 1 jug of oil. You need to make a lot of vessels. How do you make vessels? We just said this. Vessels are made by passive confidence. What he's saying, this is how it's explained in Chassidus. What he's saying here is a principle of emunah and bitachon. It's how you should work. You have 1 jug of oil, that's all you have? No problem. Make more vessels. So in this case, she borrows physical vessels. But for us to make a vessel, we said, is to have a vision, to have a picture of what we want, is to make many, many vessels. You also have to shut the door. What did we say shutting the door is? It's closing yourselves to all the outside influence. You can't have these visions if you can't have this direction, this finding of the direction that you want in life, if you're bombarded at that moment by everything around you. You have to do emunah first. You have to purge yourself first. You have to close yourself in a room and have no outside influence on you. And then you begin to imagine the vessels. So she went away and shut the door behind her and her children. They kept bringing vessels to her, and she kept pouring out of this 1 jug. There were tzaddikim who liked to do this, and they'd have a bottle of something, they cover it up so you can't see how much there is inside, and they pour and pour and pour and pour and pour and pour. And their ability to continue pouring was really dependent on how empty people were willing to be as vessels, which meant that they had purged themselves, first of all, from outside influence, but also, more importantly, that they wanted to receive good content from the tzaddik. They wanted to have a good direction to go in. So they understood the tzaddik as a power source of these good intentions, of these good directions. So they would bring so they're bringing vessel after vessel, and she's pouring and pouring and pouring. It's the same jug of oil. It's just not ending. When the vessels were all full, she said to her son, "Bring me another vessel." He answered her, "There are no more vessels," and the oil stopped. This is also to tell us that the moment that you stop imagining where you want to go, the oil, which is the good content, the actions that you can take, stop. You can only do as much as you have imagined. You can only act based on what you've already tracht good, what you've already thought good things about. And then it becomes good. It becomes good because then you pour the oil in. Then you begin to realize. She came and told the agent of God, she told the Navi, and he said, "Go sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your children can live on the rest." It's a big question about what happened here at the end. Was there enough oil to both pay back the debts and to live off of? Well, that's one option. Another option is a famous joke I can't not tell you. There's a Yerushalmer, like a Chalmer, a chassid from Yerushalayim, who wins the lottery in Israel. And he wins 50 million shekels. So they ask him, "What are you going to do with all the money?" He says, "What do you mean? I'm going to pay back my debts. And the rest, what are you going to do with the rest? The rest will wait." You didn't get it. He has so many debts that he's going to pay off his debts, and the rest can wait. The other people he has debts for. Every person in Israel owes 50, 60 million shekels, and that's why. Okay, anyway. So the question here is whether the oil is just part of it we're going to use to pay back the debts, and whatever's left over will be used for our needs, we'll sell it. Or, what's the other option? The other option is that all the oil went to pay back the debts. So how can they live off of the rest? There's no oil left. What are they going to live with?
Thinking some more good, and then it will be good. Continuing to.
They have vessels now. They have plenty of vessels. Life becomes good the moment you have vessels. The moment you even have passive confidence, what is it saying? Tracht gut, wird sein gut. That when you think good, it will be good. Even the good thoughts by themselves, without the oil, without the actions inside, are enough for you to live on. Because eventually, the good thoughts that you had will lead to action also. But even if they don't lead to action, they're still going to give you a good life. Now, why did the Rebbe have to teach us all this? Why is it not common knowledge in Yiddishkeit that this is the way you're supposed to act? Where did this go? Why did this disappear? Why do we not know? Why did we not hear about think good and it will be good before the Tzemach Tzedek? And then the Rebbe had to make a big deal out of it. And why do we not know about this concept of Hitzalech lefanai v'yes samim, that Avram was told to walk before Hashem and to lead the way? Why are we not told this? So there's actually a very good reason for it. The reason is that in Gullus, we lose these abilities. The definition of Gullus, one of the definitions of being in Gullus, is that we lose the ability to practice this in our lives. And to come out of Gullus requires us to reclaim this way of life. So this is captured beautifully in a medrash, which I believe you have. It's the introduction to Eicha Rabbah.
This is on Tisha B'Av, we say this?
So we don't say it on Tisha B'Av because it's the medrash, but some people maybe learn it. It's the introduction to medrash Eicha Rabbah. And there it tells us the story of how we lost this. And listen to this. It's an unbelievable story. Zabdi ben Levi began, the kings of the earth did not believe. It's a pasuk in Eicha. There were 4 kings. What this one demanded, that one did not demand. And they are David, Asa, Yehoshaphat, and Chizkiah. What does it mean that one demanded, the other one didn't demand? We'll see in a moment. What we're going to see is how they acted. At first it sounds hard to believe. David said, King David says, I will pursue my enemies and overtake them. And Hashem answered him, I will do so. What does it mean, I will pursue my enemies and overtake him? What does that mean? What is he saying? Excuse me, Hashem, don't bother me. Stand aside. I do everything. I do everything. Don't interfere. David says like that. That's what the Medrash says. It's not just the Medrash says it. David says it in Tehillim. I will pursue my enemies. I will overtake them. What does that mean? That he didn't believe in Hashem? Of course he believed in Hashem. But what did he feel? Active confidence. He felt that everything that I do, Hashem is with me. I don't need in the middle to stop and say, Bezrat Hashem. I don't need to say that. Because as far as I'm concerned, everything I do is what Hashem wants me to do, because I chart the course, I go, I follow it, and Hashem comes along. Of course it's going to be with Hashem, but it's not that at every moment I have to stop and rethink. It's not how it works. I will do it. And that is what is written. David smote them from twilight until the evening of the next day. This is, by the way, his small war with Amalek. And where did it happen? It happened in Gaza. Yeah, in Nachal Bsor. It's the river Bsor, which is exactly where they cut the north from the south of Gaza a few months ago. What is of the next day? Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said for 2 nights and 1 day. Really, for 2 nights and 1 day he pursued the Amalekites until he captured them and he killed them. The Holy One, blessed be He, would illuminate for him with comets and lightning. That he can't do. How does he pursue in the middle of the night? You can't pursue in the middle of the night if you don't have, like today, flares. So Hashem put flares in the sky. So Hashem's with him. He knows Hashem is with him. But don't bother me with anything else. If you want to help me. But I'm going to do it. This is active confidence. And so on. Asa, who's a few generations later, is also from the house of David. This is all kings from the house of David. Arose and said, I do not have the power to kill them, but I will pursue them, and you do what? The killing. It says, I also have some active confidence. I know how to pursue, but I don't know how to kill. This is like the Israeli army today. They know how to pursue, they don't know how to kill. Why don't they know how to kill? Maybe because they have pressure on them. Maybe because they simply don't have the stomach for it. Who knows? Asa was in the same position. He says, I can pursue, but you topple the building on them. I can't do it, they don't let me.
I don't understand what you're saying. The Israelis are killing terrorists. Well, I don't understand what you're saying. They're not killing terrorists?
No, they're killing a little bit, but they don't have the stomach to do what really needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, just
They're being stopped.
all up at one time, you know? Because of political pressures.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed, but it took about 2 weeks to get to 10,000 killed.
Yeah.
It took another 4 weeks to get to 20,000.
Right.
And since then it's been like 12 weeks, and now it's to 22 something.
Mm-hmm.
Less and less and less and less, because there's less and less, you can call it justification, you can call it whatever you want.
I think it's pressure from the
Of course it's pressure. It's pressure. And it's not just the outside world, also the Israeli system, which is unfortunately has no stomach for anything.
Really?
Yeah, that's Netanyahu and Gantz and Gallant and all those people. They have no stomach for it. Because why? Because they don't feel morally justified, because they don't recognize it as a Malik.
Although Netanyahu did say it's Amalek, and that's what he's being accused of.
What did you say, Mrs. Olga?
I didn't hear that.
Netanyahu did say in the beginning that it is Amalek, and therefore we have to kill them all.
That was in
And
the beginning.
That was
I-
the beginning.
I would find it hard to believe he said we have to kill them all. He might as well said they're a
He
Malik.
said they're Amalek.
But I don't believe he would ever say we have to kill them all. One of the things about killing about the mitzvah of annihilating a Malik is that we think that it's a mitzvah that was given to us in order to perform. In my opinion, first of all, there's not just my opinion. There's no Amalek in the world. It's gone. Amalek is today an idea. Whoever comes to kill the Jewish people is called Amalek. Right. Whoever wants to come and annihilate us, we have to annihilate. Jews do not have a stomach for this. You have to have a mitzvah that tells you that you're morally obligated to do it, because we don't know how to do it. We simply don't. We're unable. And it's a good thing about us. But
For people of chesed, is that why?
right? It's very hard for us.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Prisoner's Dilemma game theory?
Yeah, of course.
Wouldn't you say that that's kind of what Jews and Israeli people do? We don't really retaliate until something has been done to us. We're very
Mm-hmm.
kind of, we just
React.
we do good until something happens and then we retaliate. We're not the first to attack.
Right,
ever.
and then when we retaliate,
But
only
Prisoner's
partially.
Dilemma shows that that's
the
actually
the wrong.
best way to go.
Okay, so I say that. Yoshaphat arose. So again, Asa, he says, I can only pursue them, but I can't kill them. He said to him, Hashem said to him, I will do so, as it is stated. Asa pursued them, and Cushites who were falling before Hashem and before his camp. And Hashem was killing them in whatever way he was killing them. It's not written here before Asa, but rather before Hashem and before his camp. Then Yoshaphat arose. He's a few generations later. And he says, I have the power neither to kill nor to pursue. What can I do? What's my active confidence? They all have passive confidence. They all know they have to win this war, whatever their war is. Each one has a different war. But Asa says, Yoshaphat says, I can't even pursue. What can I do? I'll sing a song. And what did Hashem say? Hashem said to him, I will do so. He accepted. All you need to do is say a song. What song? Shir Sheyom. He went up into the Beis HaMikdash the next morning, and he wrote a beautiful composition for the Shir Sheyom, for the song that they sang when they're sacrificing the daily sacrifice. And that was enough. And then what happened? It says, at the time that they began with song and praise, Hashem set ambushes against the children of Ammon, Moab, and the highlands of Seir. So they were singing the song, and Hashem destroyed them. How did it happen? He sent someone else to ambush them. And that's how they were destroyed even before they came to Yerushalayim. Chizkiah, he's the last generation, he's the very, very last king who's free. After him, all the kings are already puppets installed and put in place by the Babylonians. He's the last one who's free. And he has a very well-known story that suddenly the entire camp of Assyria comes and parks in his backyard, and they're about to destroy Yerushalayim. This is not Babylon yet. It's Assyria. It's from the north. Babylon's from the south. But they come to Yerushalayim, and they want to conquer Yerushalayim. And he's sitting in front of them, and there's nothing he can do. And they taunt them for a few weeks. And they explain to them, you should give up, because we're going to come in and we're going to slaughter everyone. If you give up now, we'll take you as slaves. If you don't give up, we're going to destroy everyone. And they did this for day after day. They had a Jew with them. His name was Shevna, who was a trader, and he grew up in the Assyrian capital, and he knew Hebrew, and he spoke to them, it says in Yehudit, in Hebrew. So Chizkiah arose and said, I have the power neither to kill, nor to pursue, nor to recite song. Rather, I will sleep in my bed, and you do so. That's all I can do. I can sleep in my bed. That's not a small feat, by the way. Because you have 185,000 strong army outside your window who are about to conquer your city and kill you all. To be able to go to sleep is a big deal. That's his active confidence. It's very, very passive. Even a song, he says, I don't know how to write a new song. I don't know how to say a new song for you. Why? Because I'm so distressed. But to sleep, I know how to sleep. That I can do. So that's what happened. So Hashem said to him, I will do so. As it is stated, it was on that night that he went to sleep, that an angel of Hashem went and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. The Medrash continues, I'm not going to read it, just tell you, it continues to say that everybody agrees there was one person who escaped from the Assyrian camp, and that was Nebuchadnezzar. Who was Nebuchadnezzar? He was an officer in the Assyrian camp who, a few dozen years later, comes and does destroy Yerushalayim. So you see that this whole story is a story of a downward spiral. Starting from David, where everything is active confidence, and he doesn't even need passive confidence. He's not passive in anything. He does everything himself. He says, I don't need you, Hashem, to help me. Of course Hashem helps him. Of course Hashem is with him. But he's active in everything. He has all the power. and the activity level diminishes slowly until we come to Chizkiah, and there's nothing they know how to do anymore. And everything becomes passive confidence. The most I can do is I can go to sleep and dream that somehow we're going to get out of this situation.
So what's the desirable goal for us to be?
Wait, before we get to us, what this medrash is tracing is the historical loss of active and passive confidence. It's telling us that the Beis HaMikdash represents the complete, the Beis HaMikdash, not exactly, I didn't say that right, but the time of the Beis HaMikdash represents the time when this diminished, and slowly as it diminished, it became conquerable. The enemies were able not just to penetrate, but to destroy everything. Because we lost it, because exile started after David, when the kings lost their ability to have active confidence. Okay, now for us, what's our goal?
But active confidence from David seems heipach the point, because it's all about me. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this.
He says it to Hashem. It's not about me in the sense that it's me and not you. It's about me in the sense that I have to take the initiative. I'm going to do everything. You're with me, of course you're with me. That's why Hashem in the end does the flares in the sky so we can pursue at night. Hashem is entirely with them, but Hashem can leave it all like the older child. Go where you want, I'm coming after you. Where you lead, I'll go. That was in the time of David, and slowly it disappeared because they had less and less confidence. There's a question of why did they lose their confidence? What happened? As I said before, the Beis HaMikdash was there until the very end. So it's not the Beis HaMikdash that gave them the active confidence, it's something else. So we'll end with this in a stroke of one of the most ingenious things that have been said before Chassidus. Chassidus answers this very easily. I'm not going to take the Chassidic answer. You already know the answer, even though you may not know it, but you know it already. Chassidus looks inside of us and says, this is what caused it. But Chassidus is a language of the nefesh. It's a language of the psyche that can penetrate into ourselves and think about things from a psychological point of view. We didn't have that language openly in Torah until the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov, that's his big chiddush, that I can speak about inner processes inside of us in Torah language. I have Torah language for speaking about this. But before Chassidus, it's considered to be a small light. Before Chassidus came the Ramchal. And just to make it really, really short, because I don't know how long we've been at it. I don't know what time it is even. An hour. So we'll end now. The Ramchal was about 80 years before the Baal Shem Tov. And he was a Mekubal, but he was a very, very eclectic man he wrote plays. There's 3 plays that he wrote. Very interesting plays. He writes arguments, apologetics. He wrote his own Tikkunei Zohar, a whole new Tikkunei Zohar. Another 70 Tikkunim, he says, I'm writing it. He wrote incredible things about the third Beis HaMikdash. He was everywhere. If you think that people held the Rebbe in high regard, you should know that when the Ramchal went into his yeshiva, when he would come up the steps or whatever it was, and he entered the hall, they would sing to him a verse from Tehillim that says, Havaya beheichal kodsho. Hashem is now in his holy chamber, in his chamber of honor. Who did they mean? They meant him. That's the way he was revered at the time.
Where was he?
In Italy. He wrote the famous Mesilas Yesharim. Everybody knows Mesilas Yesharim, because if you're not a chassid, then that's the book that you learn. There's no reason for a chassid not to learn it. It's just that it's not yet chassidus because it doesn't yet have language for analyzing the inner functioning of the psyche. It's more behavioral. And it follows a behavioral course. But in the Mesilas Yesharim, when he discusses cleanliness, which is one of the traits that he wants you to have, he says what does cleanliness give you? He says, let's look at what it gave David. And he says there that David in Tehillim writes the following verse. Erchatz b'nikayon kapai, I will cleanse my hands, v'asoveva mizbachacha Hashem, and I will encircle your altar Hashem. What is David talking about? What altar is he talking about? There's no Beis Mikdash in the time of David. So they built an altar where eventually the altar would be, where the Mizbeach would be. And he says something interesting. He says, for me to come to the house of God, I need to cleanse my hands. Says the Ramchal, what is David saying? He's saying that because cleansing my hands means tshuva. I wash my hands of everything that's a transgression, completely clean them. Then I can walk to your altar, Hashem, and encircle it. And what he means by encircle it is that I now have the ability to act. Usually, you don't circle the altar. When do you circle the altar? You circle it on Sukkos. Then everybody would circle with their lulavim. What's the symbol of walking with the lulav around the Mizbeach? What is that a symbol of? A victory. We take our lulav, and the lulav is meant to be like a victor's sword. And we just went through Yamim Noraim, and we know that Hashem judged us favorably, so we walk around the altar. It's a sign of victory. Says David, in order to walk around the Mizbeach this way, in a sign of victory, in a sign of being a victor, I have to first cleanse myself. If I can't cleanse myself, then I don't have the motivation, I don't have the outlook of someone who can be victorious. It doesn't work. What is he saying? He's saying that the reason we don't have this is because we're bombarded from the outside by all kinds of things that are transgressions. They soil us. They soil us in the sense that we don't have the ability to act because we're bogged down by all these transgressions. And they're not necessarily even averus that we did. It's even just the fact that we don't believe only in Hashem. There's other things that we need to cleanse ourselves of. That's how the Ramchal explains it. And he says if you want to come to a state of being able to act like David, you have to cleanse yourself of everything. Once you cleanse it, that gives a whole new meaning to going to the mikveh every morning. Because people always ask, why do you go to the mikveh every morning? Because the whole point of going to the mikveh every morning is getting rid of all the things that have soiled my mind. And to be reborn, as it were. There's only Hashem in the mikveh. There's nothing else. The moment that I can do that, I can cut everything else off. I have the confidence not only to plan, passive confidence, but also to act. I can be like David, who can go out to war and say, I will pursue, I will destroy, I will do it all. Why? Because I know you're with me. Why do I not feel that you're with me if I'm soiled? Because you're not with me. Because what's with me? Everything that's bombarding me. Everything that I've done wrong. That's what I'm carrying around. I can't carry it and at the same time feel that you, Hashem, are with me. I have to get rid of that. Before you go into battle, before you go into life, every day, you have to sit and say Shema. And in Shema, what do? I cast off everything else. There's only Hashem. And now I can go into my life. Now I can start doing things. So this is again, we're just taking a little taste of passive and active confidence. In the body, first of all, in Sfirot, they're Netzach and Hod. Active confidence is Netzach, like to be victorious. And Hod is the passive confidence. They're the right and left feet. So the right and left feet are the most active, the ones that pull you forward. They're the ones with which Hashem, that's what Hashem was referring to when he said to Avram, walk before me. Use your feet, not physical feet, that too. But symbolically, the feet are the passive and active confidence. Which foot do you need to put forward first?
Right.
So usually people say, put your best foot forward. Which one is that? Yeah, you'd think it's the right one. But really, how do you march in the army?
We weren't in the
I
army.
don't know.
But you know, you've heard it.
Left, right, left.
Why is it?
Left, right, left.
Because they know, because they all take from David. All the traditions in all the armies of the world, at least the ones that came from Christian sources, but even in the Quran, I think also, they come from David, and they all had somehow, they knew this, that you start with your left foot, because you first have to have passive confidence. And once you have a picture, then it's right. Then you start moving. That's the way every company works also. First you have a business plan, you have a picture, you have a vision, and then you go and do it. Everybody knows that that's how you work. So it's left and then right. You would think that the right is more important, but it's not in this case. And so that's what it means to walk before Hashem. That's how we have to do these things in order, first of all, to clean ourselves of all these foreign influences. And once there's only Hashem in our minds, we have a picture and we're connected only to Hashem, we walk forward and we are reclaiming this thing that they used to have before we went out into Galus. The Galus is a state in which you don't remember that you have a left and right foot. They've been chopped off, as it were. You don't, a spiritual left and right foot. You don't remember that you're supposed to envision and then actually carry out. So, B'ezrat Hashem, so this is the beginning of reclaiming this. That the Rebbe started also. The Rebbe didn't teach right away active confidence. He first of all taught passive confidence. First of all, have a picture in your head. Think good. Think good thoughts. You can't think good thoughts if your hands are unclean.
Is that what Abraham Avinu did? That he had the left first? He had a picture?
He had a picture.
He didn't know where he was going?
Right? But he had a picture. And then he saw it. When he went with Yitzchak to bring her into the Akedah, also, Hashem didn't tell. He said, we'll know when we get there. We'll know. How will you know? Because it's a picture that I have. I know what this is going to look like. By the way, the first mitzvah that we receive in this week's Parsha, I always say we'll end and then I think of something more to say. Sorry, but it's really good. The first mitzvah that we have in the Torah is Achodesh Hazeh Lechem Rosh Chodashim. This month is for you the first of months. This is this week's Parsha. And it's so strong that Chazal say, why did the Torah even include the book of Bereshis? It should start from this mitzvah. How does that mitzvah work? We think that they went out and looked into the sky. And then if they saw the new moon, it was a new moon. Not at all. They had to calculate before in order to know whether the eyewitness testimony was right and possible even. So Rabban Gamliel in his study, he had pictures of everything. And there's whole discussion on halacha, how did he do the pictures? Because you're not allowed to picture the sun and the moon, all kinds of things. But you have to calculate first. You have to have a picture first in your mind of what's possible. Then you can hear testimony from witnesses who say, this is what we saw. And then you know if it's possible or not. Did they see something that's possible or did they see something that's impossible? Exactly. You should have a picture. But also you should be flexible.
Ask you to explain this bitachon chut, the gematria is here, and what does this mean in terms of Shema and Bayis. That's one thing. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you is that I've actually heard that the difference between Emunah and Bitachon, Emunah is on the past, and Bitachon is on the future.
That's the Chazon Ish. And the Rebbe, he doesn't like to say about anyone that he's wrong.
Right.
He says that is not the traditional meaning of Emunah and Bitachon. Because it's not the traditional meaning. The traditional meaning in Shara Bitachon and Chovos HaLevavos is the way we explained it now. That Emunah is cleaning yourself of all foreign influences.
Right. So,
it's not before and after the fact. The Chazon Ish wanted...
cleaning yourself from what happened, so that is...
No, not what happened. Of all the foreign influences. Not about the past. Of everything that taints your mind to think that there's anything else acting in this world except for Hashem. That's Emunah. Emunah is Emunah and Hashem Echad. There's nothing else who's responsible for what's going on here. The Bitachon is always forging the future, creating it.
So that is.
No, you said the bitachon is after the fact.
So, yes, bitachon is for
It's
the
not.
future.
Bitachon is before, because I'm picturing what's going to be.
Bitachon is, yeah.
And he says it's after. He says that after something has happened, now you should have bitachon that this was the best possible outcome. The Rebbe completely doesn't accept that. He rejects it. Again, he doesn't like to say someone's wrong, so he says this is not what our traditional understanding of bitachon is.
No, my understanding of bitachon means that what is going to happen now is going to happen. I trust that it's going to happen good.
It's a picture. I have to picture what's going to happen. That's bitachon. And Hashem will fulfill my picture because that's what He asked me to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so now this.
Explain, yeah.
So on one foot, I'll try on one foot. Okay. So first of all, vitach is the same letters as chut.
All right.
So in Kabbalah, now if you want like a picture, to be able to picture this. So the picture, I don't know, I think I have a pen because I took it out before Shabbos. Anybody have a pen handy?
I have a pen in the house.
Can I just ask
Which one would you like?
Let me finish this first, and then we'll. So, when Hashem creates the world, the first thing He does is He creates an empty space. Okay? What is it empty of? In His case, it's of His infinite light. We also, before we start anything, we have to create an empty space. Empty of what? Foreign influences. This is emunah. Emunah is always round. You have to think about it. Emunah is feminine because of that. Everything that's round is feminine. Then He inserts a kav ein sof, a line of the infinite light into it, and begins to create the world as it were inside. What is this? The kav is the bitachon. It's that I'm now forging a reality inside the empty space that I created. First I purge myself, I make empty space, and then I fill it, like we said, like the jug of oil. I'm filling it now with oil. I'm filling it in with good things.
The circle is Hod and the Kav is Netzach.
No, both Hod and Netzach are confidence. They're parts of the circle, of the line. Okay, and that's why bitachon, the word in the Torah is vitach, which is the same word as chut. The same letters, not the same word. The same letters as chut. This is sometimes called a kav, and its inner aspect is called a chut. So it's a very delicate remez, like an allusion to the fact that it's talking about the line that penetrates. This is our line that penetrates reality, but only if you first cleanse yourself, only if you first purge yourself, both of all the outside influence and also of your transgressions. So that's the idea of the chut. Now, what else do you want? The beat. Okay. Yeah. So the middle letters of Vetachet Habayit, this line, if I look, there's only 3 letters that are in the middle of the words. Et doesn't have a letter in between. It's just Aleph and Tav, beginning and end. But Vetach has Tet, and Habayit has Bet Yud. So Bet Yud and Tet together, they make a very important holy name. It's called Bet Yud Tet, or you can say it's Beat. And the Arizal says that you use this name in 2 places. He gives one place for men and one place for women. He says, when do men use it? He says, when they light Hanukkah candles. So you should have in mind this name, Beat. What do you do with the Hanukkah candles? You're increasing light. So that's the idea that you should have increasing bitachon. More and more bitachon as Hanukkah goes on. The whole thing of Hanukkah, what are we commemorating? 2 things. The victory over the Hellenists, which was also a military victory, which was very difficult because they were outnumbered, but they had a lot of confidence in Hashem. But then they also had to conquer the spiritual, which is what? That they were able to light the menorah for 8 days, and the menorah here is the good content that you're introducing into the empty space. So you cleaned out the Beis HaMikdash, now you have to begin bringing in all the good light that you had from before, the wisdom of Torah. So that's what they did for it. When does a woman use this name Beat? When she lights Shabbos candles. It says that's what you should have in mind when you're lighting Shabbos candles. What do you do when you light Shabbos candles? Everybody davens. But now we're learning that it's not just davening, it's to have an image. It's to have a picture of what I want Hashem should do. I need to have an image. That's why I cover my eyes also. Theoretically, I'm covering my eyes because I already lit the candles and I want to say the bracha and then suddenly see the light. I said, it's a trick, but it's not the best halachic trick. A lot of poskim say it makes no difference whether you cover your eyes or not. You already lit the candles. It's not solving you from that problem really. But according to the Elisha, the reason you cover your eyes is because that's the time of imagining the future that you want for your family, for everyone around you, for the Am Yisrael, and so on. And the name to have in mind is this bit, because this is bitachon. Okay?
What about when you just start with this vision of what you want, are you then restricting what Hashem's going to give you to what you can perceive?
Because that's what he wants. But like the Rebbe tried to convince us, you should think big. As big as you can. But it's up to you. If you don't think at all, that's like nothing. Like you're not even giving Hashem anything to work with. And again, we're afraid of this. This is the fear of Golus. This is the fear of the whole... I haven't lived in America for 30-something years. And the America that I left in 1990 is a completely different America that I come back to now. Because in 1990, Yiddishkeit was a survival instinct type of Yiddishkeit. There was no growth. The growth was minimal at all, if it even existed. And certainly you couldn't imagine there would be new places where there would be Jewish communities, not just Jewish communities. Do you have a house like this? I don't know what Houston was like in 1990, but I imagine there was nothing like this. And this happened because the Rebbe turned everybody's head around. And he explained that you can't live this way. If the Galus is going to end, and we're coming towards the time of Mashiach, you have to change your picture of what life is about. And you have to be active. And the way a Jew is active is first of all to think good. First of all to have passive confidence. And afterwards to build upon that picture that you have and create the reality that you have in your mind. There's one story about the Rebbe I have to share with you. For me, I think this is the moment that he exhibited this the most. They say that he walked in on the Friediger Rebbe, and the Friediger Rebbe was deep in thought. And when he finished, the Rebbe asked him, "What were you thinking about?" And he said, "I wish I had $1 million." At the time, 1940s. Why do you need $1 million? So he says, because then I'd be able to put an avreich, meaning a young man, in every city in the United States, and he'd be able to rekindle Yiddishkeit in each of the places. What?
That's unbelievable.
That was in 1940. He didn't get a chance to. The Rebbe said, it says there, from what I remember, the Rebbe answered, you don't need $1 million, you need the avreichim. That's the problem.
Exactly.
And that's what the Rebbe built over 40 years. He prepared people to be able to work this way. To come to a place that has nothing, but to envision. After the first one did it, and the second one did it, and the third one did it, it became easier because now people had a picture of what was possible. But still, every person has to do it themselves. But you know, that's the beauty, that's the most proactive thing a Jew can do, is to make Chabad House into his industry, into his right? To have a vision like a business, whatever it is. And that's the transformation that the Rebbe created. He said it's not about the money. The money will come. It's first of all about getting people to be able to understand what you even mean when you say go somewhere and build Yiddishkeit.
If you had $1 million, this wouldn't happen.
Probably.
Oh,
Because that's exactly Reb Usher. That's what I said about Reb Usher. He didn't want the money. Because he wants to be able to ask Hashem all the time, because that is his relationship. That's how you create the relationship. So, this really is the end, because we could go on forever.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much. This is
So,
very enlightening.
And we have living proof here.
Right?
Rabbi Moshe,
Living proof from all of us.
a weekly distribute.
Wonders.
If anyone's
Yeah.
noticed over the
Yeah.
past year or so, I think we've been distributing it in Houston. Tomer puts it around town, but there's wonders. And wonders, Rabbi Ginsburg and Rabbi Moshe Ganus is one of Rabbi Yitzhak Ginsburg's holy students, and it's a
We've
short
seen it, yeah.
sweetness
and this is
for
last
the
where we
weekly
used it in